everyone, it's Tox from CritsHappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. Today we've got a critical review of Hot Rod Creeps, the customizable racing game from Cryptozoic. Now most of you know Cryptozoic because of the vast amounts of licensed games that they have. For instance, the World of Warcraft trading card game, the recently announced Castle Detective game, and also the Walking Dead board game. They have a great amount of contacts in the entertainment industry, which helps them deliver some really highly quality licensed products to the board game industry. But in addition to board games, they also make trading card games and comic books as well. So they're really not quite tops and not quite Fantasy Flight games. They're somewhere in between. I like to think of Cryptozoic as more of an entertainment company. They strive to live up to a principle called fans first. And they always want to make sure that the games they make and the products they deliver are super fun for all of us, the fans. Now, this, Hot Rod Creeps, is not a heavily licensed game. This is on the flip side of what they make, which is their own original design and their own original unique artwork and universes. Now you'll see some things in here that may remind you of other games. For instance, there's 6 races that come, or 6 factions, I guess if you want to call them, that come with the game. They're the monsters. There's Food Fight from another Food Fight game from Cryptozoic. There's Aliens, there's Rockabillys, there's Battle Wizards, also from the epic Skullfire, and then Underworld. So they blend in some mixture of people from other games they already have, plus some unique new types of creatures and people in the game as well. I say creatures and people because it really is a unique style game like that. This is a racing game. As you can see laid out in front of me, there's a track, there's a jump, there's a ring of fire. It's not NASCAR. It's not Formula One. It is a very unique game. Now, there are plenty of other types of games like this in terms of racing, where you make a track or you have a board that has a set track and you just have different boards that are interchangeable, and the object is to either roll dice or play cards and get around the track. But Cryptozoic has taken a different look with this, both from style and from gameplay. Does it deliver? Is it fun? Is it something that you'll enjoy even if you don't like racing? Well, why don't we try and answer those questions? Rev up your engines, get your tires ready to roll, and let's jump onto the racetrack with Hot Rod Creeps. So Hot Rod Creeps at its core is a racing game. Everybody starts on the colored squares, and you'll notice that there are 2s, 3s, and 4s. Those correspond to the number of cards you will draw off of your tank or your deck. Now there's 6 different factions. There is Food Fight from the popular Food Fight game that Cryptozoic has brought out as well. There are the Battle Wizards, who are from the epic Spell Wars game that they've also brought out. There are the Rockabillys. There are the Monsters. There are the Aliens. And there are the Underworld. And on each card, there's an upgrade slot for a weapon, an engine, wheels, and a pit crew. And as you make it to pit stops that you'll see along the way, you'll be able to have the option to get upgrades for your cars. And each one of those upgrades are going to allow you to wreak more havoc when you're on the racetrack. And that's really what this game is all about. While yes, you want to get to the finish line first and cross it, or if you're playing a game like this where there's a circuit, go around as many times and make it there first, you really want to wreak as much havoc and mayhem on your opponents as possible. And your cards are going to help you do that. So each player chooses a faction. So let's say in this case we chose Underworld. You have a small deck of cards that's called your tank. You shuffle those up and you draw the number of cards equal to your starting position. So in this case, the Underworld is on 2, so I would draw 2 cards. I would then look at my cards. Now, you'll notice the artwork is the same, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. There is a 4 and a 5, and then there is a name. This one is called Reel 'em In. This one is called Careful Cornering. You're going to play a card from your hand, or you have the option of flipping a card from the top of your deck, or you have the option of flipping a card from the top of the Nitro deck. Now the Nitro deck has really, really high move cards, and that's what these numbers are. Those are the number of spaces you're going to move. But they also will generally be very risky. They could help you out greatly, or they could hurt you greatly. So if you're lagging behind in the game, the Nitro deck is a great way to catch up. But if you're ahead in the game, it's a risky gamble as to if it's going to push you even further ahead. So let's say it's my turn as the underworld. I look at my hand and I notice that I have two different types of cards in terms of abilities. You'll see this one says flip only and this one says hand only. The difference means I only get to do what the cards say if I play the hand only from my hand or if the flip only from flipping it off the top of my deck. Again, when it's my turn, I have the option of either playing a card from my hand, flipping a card from the top of my deck, or flipping a card from the Nitro deck. So if I were to play this flip only card from my hand, I wouldn't get its ability. I would only get its move bonus. And that does factor into gameplay in terms of different situations depending on how you have the track laid out. So in this case, let's say that I played the 5, and it says, hand only, you ignore cornering penalties this turn. Well, what does that mean? Let's get into that. I would move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I haven't gone through a corner, so it really wouldn't affect me. But let's say I was right there when I started my turn, and I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll notice that there's these red lines on each of the corners, and that there's these markers that say corner plus 4, corner plus 3, corner plus 5. What that means is if you take that corner by the use of a move card that is equal to or greater than that number, you're going to have something bad happen to you. If I corner around these tight ones that are 3 pluses by using a 3, 4, or 5 or higher, then I have to destroy an upgrade. So if this card didn't prevent me from ignoring that, I would have had to destroy 2 upgrades right there. If I go around a 4 corner, I take 2 damage. Now when you take damage, you discard cards from your hand first and then from the top of your tank. So let's presume I did that. Let's presume I went around that corner using something that was 4 or higher and couldn't have me ignore penalties like this. I would have to take 1 damage, the last card in my hand, and 2 damage, flip the top card from my deck into my discard pile. Now what happens is over the course of time, because your deck is so small, you're going to run out of gas from your tank. So you're going to have to gas up. Well, guess where you do that? When you make it to a pit stop, you have the option of either gassing up, which is where you take the remaining cards in your deck and the cards that are in your discard pile and shuffle them together to remake your tank, or at a pit stop, you have the option of drawing an upgrade. Now, if you run out of gas, if something terrible happens and I'm here and I have no more cards left in my tank and I have no other way to play cards, I end up having to go back to the last pit stop and re-gassing up. So even though you're ahead, you got to gamble correctly and make sure that you're playing your strategies right to get you at least to the next pit stop. Because in a situation like this, on this track, you have a lot of corners and hazards to go through before you get to the next pit stops. Now also on the back of these, besides being corner markers, there's also different things that are hazards or bonuses that can help you out. And some of these are really funny, between potholes or between varmint crossings or oil slicks. There's also things like the spotlight, which allow you to draw a move card, which would be something off the top of your deck. So there's things that can help you, things that can hinder you. And it's completely customizable that way because you can put those bonuses or those hazards anywhere on the track you want. The corner bonuses, or the corner damages actually, are always in effect. So whether you want to put these out there or not, you don't really need to. It's just a good way of reminding you. We don't necessarily put them on the track, we put them a little bit off the track. Now in addition, you'll notice there's a jump. The jump is really funny. So there's a flaming ring of fire, which is set off in the center of the flaming ring of fire piece. There's 2 little extra pieces here that make up the space in between the jump. The first one is the flaming ring of fire, and it says burn 6 cards off your tank. So if you land on that spot, or you're pushed onto that spot by someone else's abilities, then you're going to end up having to discard the top 6 cards of your tank into your discard pile. Now let's say you make it through that, but you fall short of the landing zone of the jump and you land right here. There's the shark tank. The shark tank makes you discard an upgrade and then take 3 damage. Now there's a difference between burning and taking damage. Taking damage first comes from discarding cards from your hand, and if there's no more, then you discard from the top of your deck. But burning cards specifically means you take them off the top of your deck. So someone could burn cards and still have cards in their hand, but if you take a lot of damage, you're probably going to end up with no cards in your hand. And if you ever end up with no cards in your hand, you can just draw 4 cards off the top of your tank or off the top of your deck. Again, if you run out of cards though, you're going to end up in a position of having to move backwards to get to the pit stop. And that's where all the mayhem happens. You start getting upgrades like weapons. For instance, the Pit Fiend Flamer, which says when you play a move 4 or 5, deal 1 damage to each foe with 4 or more upgrades. You get into engines, which make you go faster or affect you when you go fast, like the Arcane Accelerator. When you play a move 4, you may move up to 2 additional spaces. You're going to get wheels, which are absolutely insane, like tank treads. When you draft 1 or more hot rods, choose one of them, burn a card off his tank for each upgrade you have. What is drafting? We'll get into that in a second. You also get the pit crew, and the pit crew are really funny. Like these guys, the lug nuts. The lug nuts say when you pit, you may replace any of your upgrades. So they give you a lot of options. Now what is drafting? We mentioned before on the tank treads that there's drafting. Well, you can't be on the same spot as another hot rod creep. So if I'm right here and I play a card that was a move of 2, I would go 1, 2, and I would be on the same spot as that opponent creep. But I can't do that, so I have to draft him and move forward 1 spot. In a very large player game, this can get pretty crazy. Let's say, for instance, I'm right here, and these 3 guys are my opponents in front of me. And again, I play a move of 2. I would go 1, 2. I would then draft that person, I would draft that person, and I would draft that person, and end up right here. So drafting can become a huge thing. And when you have different upgrades that affect some or all of the people you draft, it can get really crazy. It also adds a nice bit of strategy to the game when you get things that allow you to move your opponents in terms of lining up the right timing for you to draft your opponents. Now, one other thing to note, you're going to want to plan what card you play next based off of where people are. But quite frankly, sometimes you can't even do that. And sometimes you just have to flip cards off the top of your deck or off the top of the Nitro deck. And the Nitro deck, for example, has things like this. The Blown Engine. Oops, you move 0. They also have cards like this, which is Throw a Rod, which is move 0, which is the same thing. And then there's really, really powerful cards like Burning Oil, which is 8 move and it's going to send you flying ahead, but you have to burn 8 cards off of your tank. So things like that could help you, but as you can see from 2 in a row zeros, there's things that could hurt you. It's a gamble, but it's a fun piece that adds to the gameplay. So that's Hot Rod Creeps. You basically take your turn by playing a card from your hand, moving the number of spaces. If you played it from your hand, you get the hand bonus. If you choose to flip a card from the top of your tank to move, and it has a flip only bonus, you get that bonus. Or you flip a card from the Nitro deck, you race around the whole place, you affect your opponents with the ultimate goal of getting to that finish line first. So that's Hot Rod Creeps. Now, to be honest, there's a lot of things I like about this game, and there's a lot of things I don't. So let's get into the things I don't first, and we'll end on the things that I like. Some of the things that I don't like, first off, a game with great artwork, beautiful artwork that's fun and unique and engaging, that all the cards are the same. This was something that drove me absolutely bonkers. You have this great, unique style of artwork. And not only are they the same, but they're the same pictures on the back of the card. So there's not a lot of flair and pizzang and panache or whatever other crazy words you want to use. That was a little disappointing. With as unique of an artwork style as this game is, it really would have been nice to see different artwork on the cards. Even if it was as simple as all of the 5s have one piece of artwork, all of the 4s have another, just something to break it up and be a little different. When you're looking at your hand and they all have the same pictures on them, and the only thing different is the number and the name, it just kind of takes a little bit away. The other thing is that the pieces don't always fit together very easily or very well. It's a game that once it is put together, if you shake it or move it a little bit, it can kind of mess up things, which is a little disappointing. The other thing too is that the pieces are not all that sturdy. We've had a couple of them break or bend or be damaged just with very minimal interaction, and that was a little disappointing. You also don't get enough pieces. Now you get a lot of pieces, don't get me wrong. You do get a lot of pieces in this. This is only half the pieces put together to make this track. But like these sharp corners, there's really not enough of them in my opinion. You get a ton of the really wide corners, but not enough of the sharp ones. And if you're playing on a small table or a thin table, it really would have been nice to have more of those to create a little bit more complexity without having to have such a large space. The final thing, and this is something that really drives me nuts, and I will just downright say it, I hate this part of the game, is the flaming ring of fire. Why do I hate the flaming ring of fire? Well, here's why. I love the concept of it. I love the idea of the jump. I love the concept of hitting and taking damage if you don't get through it. But what I don't like is that if it's down, it falls over really easily. And I mean really easily. You shakes and wobbles and falls over, and even after you balance it and hold it up, if you're playing a really ruckus game with adults that are laughing and having fun and banging their fists on the table, or kids who may knock the table and bump the table, it doesn't take much to shake that thing and have it fall over. That's disappointing. For a game that's as unique as this, and to have that fun of a concept put into it, it's really disappointing that they didn't just put a little bit more on the base to make that thing capable of standing up. So what we've had to do is take an extra piece of cardboard that comes with the game and kind of use it as a prop to make sure that it holds it up. And even then, it doesn't work all that well. That was really disappointing. So, let's get on to some of the things that I like. While the artwork is not as varied on the decks as I would like, the artwork in general is amazing. If you like the artwork in Epic Spell Wars, you're going to love the artwork in this. It has the same style, same flash, same flair. The different names of the cards are absolutely comical. The first thing I drew for an upgrade was called the Satanic Mechanic. How do you not like that? That's funny. And they do funny things when they interact with people. You know, you have like tank treads for your wheels and, you know, roulette wheels for your wheels. And there's weapons that are like slug launchers and just things that are funny. And that makes the engagement part of the game even better. When you're playing with a large group and you say things like, I'm going to run over you with my tank treads and shoot a slug launcher at you, you laugh. And it's just funny. It is a game that is much better with more people than less. It's playable with less, but the more people on the track, the more mayhem that's going to ensue. I really like the gameplay. The gameplay is very, very engaging. When you sit down and you're finished with your turn and you're like at this point here and you know you've got a 2 to get you around the corner safely, and then somebody does something to somebody else who then puts them in a position to do something to somebody else who then puts them in a position of being in first and affecting the person in last, and you get moved back, it's a lot happening and a lot going on, and I really like that. I don't like games where you're done with your turn and you're just waiting for it to go around the table until it comes back to you. I want engagement and I want to be interested in what my opponents are doing. This game does that very, very well. I also like the fact that because you do get a lot of pieces in this, you can customize this game in any form or fashion you want. I do highly suggest that you play with some of the suggested tracks that are in the rulebook first, because they get you used to the pit stop mechanic, how many pit stops to include in a track, and how to space them out. But it is a lot of fun to realize that you can start crisscrossing tracks between jumping in the flame of fire. You can make really large sprawling tracks, you can make really tiny tracks, and you can make circuit tracks like this where you go around and hit the finish line and you can make it laps and you go around multiple times. Or you can make it where it just starts on one end and it finishes on the other. There's a lot of replayability with that. There's also the hazard tiles that you can place wherever you want on the board and just wreak more havoc. And that's really the most fun of the game, is it's mayhem. It's not NASCAR, it's not Formula One, it's oh my crazy Battle Wizards, Rockabilly, Aliens, Tank Tread, Slug Launchers, Nitro Deck, insanity. And that makes it a lot of fun. So where does it fall? Well, some bad component issues, some challenges, some design things that were really funky with the artwork of why there wasn't more, but some great gameplay and some engaging fun. Where does that all fit into? We're going to go ahead and give Hot Rod Creeps a hit. It's super fun, it's a lot of engagement in terms of gameplay, but there are some detractors that come away from it. Now, one final thing that I'll say, this is one of the more brilliant ideas for a game piece component. It's a simple acrylic cube or rectangle that has a sticker put on it that has the same picture again that's on the artwork for the factions or the races, but this little thing is really, really cool. I would highly suggest that if you get angry and you're losing, you don't pick it up and chuck it at your opponent. It could hurt. I'm not saying that from experience, but I may be saying that from experience. But it is a really, really nice little addition to the game. So overall, Cryptozoic has a hit on their hands. It is a lot of fun. For the manufacturer's suggested price at $44.95, there's a really good amount of value in it. And as long as you're okay, being careful with the pieces, propping up your flame of fire, and being okay with the fact that you're going to pay a good amount for a game that doesn't have a lot of varied artwork, but the artwork it has is really good, at the end of the day, you'll have a lot of fun with Hot Rod Creeps. We hope you enjoyed this critical review, but feel free to let us know what you think. Leave your comments here on the YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+, and of course at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, thank you so much for watching. Keep revving your engines, rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.